June was a very, very difficult month for us. We had lots and lots and lots of rain that interfered with all sorts of things. But we still made quite a bit of progress. So as I show always, the dots, the blue dots represent all the dots, all the sites that we're tracking. As we break it down on a regional basis, you're going to see that actually a lot of work has been completed. We moved away from the green dots as being the good dots to the red dots being the good dots, because red means that not only has the site been completed, but it also has power. We suffered through for a while with a lot of sites that we had completed, but we just didn't have power to the sites yet. And a lot of that stuff has been corrected. So on Region 1, we have 25 sites. 22 of them have been completed. So that's, again, significant progress. One of them, which we show here in the middle, is let me see, this site over here is a site that, again, we've completed civil, but we still don't have power for it. That one's been in that state for quite a while. Hardin up here is one that's been difficult to build, but we're actually pouring concrete this week for the tower foundations, and we expect the tower to be done in about a week and a half. That means stacked. The tower has already been delivered to the site, but we're waiting for the concrete to complete and cure so we can start the stacking process. The only site here that hasn't started has been Calhoun, which I show here with the dotted red. And the reason for that is Calhoun is a lease site. And one of the things that we've kind of run across, which is why we've waited as much as possible for the lease sites, is that just like we have to worry about frequency coordination for all the 700 megahertz spectrum, we have to worry about frequency coordination for the microwave. Microwave is very different in that it's very focused and very narrow. And so when we've had to move things around, when we change the specific frequency that we're using for the microwave link, we also have to change the position in the tower of that dish because sometimes there's interference issues at the other end. Because it's a lease site, every time we move the dish up and down the tower, we got to go through all the attorneys and all the paperwork. And so we decided that we were kind of slow walk the lease sites until we figured out all the frequency coordination with the sites that are surrounding the lease sites, so we didn't have to go through this all the time. So we're still progressing in some of the lease sites, but this particular one, because it has 3 legs to it, we've settled to where they go, and now we're waiting for the attorneys to approve all the paperwork. Once that's approved, we're going to move pretty quickly because it's a lease site. The tower already exists. All right, Region 2. Again, we have 11 sites in Region 2. 9 of the 11 have been completed. All right, one of them has been completed, but we don't have power in it, which is the KTI in Fort Dodge. And the other one is a lease site over here, which is a Chickasaw lease site. We've actually started the construction process there. So as I show down here at the bottom, 9 of the 11 sites have power to them.
Is the Chickasaw just a microwave?
Correct. Correct. And as a matter of fact, if we go back to Region 1, this Calhoun site is a microwave-only site as well.
Chris says he swears he seen the light flashing in Story when we drove by yesterday.
It was late in the afternoon, though, so it might have been before you got that done.
Were you tired, or?
Yes, I'm always tired. I have small kids.
It's possible, but as of
as expensive as it was to hook up, it should be on.
Good, good. And if that's the case, we can jump on that site immediately because all the equipment is installed and ready to go.
I drove by on Tuesday night late. It was not on, for sure. So.
If you saw it yesterday, great.
Yeah, so many sites, sometimes I don't remember what I see. So I live and die by spreadsheet status updates. All right, Region 3, we have 14 sites in Region 3. 13 of the 14 have been completed. One of them remains without power, which is this Cherokee site over here. And the one that we actually have not started construction is one of the IPTVs, Rock Rapids. That one got kind of complicated, so we're trying to figure out how to resolve that one. We might actually have to take down the entire tower and replace it. So we're trying to figure out
Why?
that one. What's that?
Why?
Cost. The cost of the modification, after we've added some additional things, the cost of modification, it looks like it's more expensive to modify the tower and more time consuming than it is to just replace the tower. So replacing the tower, we can order a tower, but again, we'll have to coordinate downtime, but basically, we can replace a tower a lot quicker than we can modify one, especially one that's live.
Do you have to go through all the NEPA?
Nope. Because it's a one-for-one replacement. If we were to build a twin tower, then yes. So that's why we're looking at, we either do the mod or we actually just go ahead and replace the thing.
When are you going to decide that?
We still have people up in the office this week. I think we should have a decision by the end of tomorrow.
Okay.
All right, Region 4. So Region 4, we have 14 sites. All 14 sites are completed, and all 14 sites have power. Region 5, we have 12 sites in Region 5. 9 of the sites have been completed. One of them is active, meaning it's an active build, which is Isicsb, which is an IPTV site. And then the 2 that haven't started are the 2 lease sites because we wanted to make sure everything was tight and good so that we can go ahead and proceed. We actually have the leases are locked down and everything. I just want to make sure that we don't have to make a change because if we do, then again, it gets cumbersome and complicated. So before we do anything, I want to make sure that Isicsb presents no problems to us. And then Region 6, we have 16 sites in Region 6, 14 are completed, and 2 of them are active builds. One of them is a lease site, which is in Dubuque. We're moving forward with that one. And Cedar Falls Dispatch. Notice in the legend, I took out regulatory over here because we have no longer regulatory issues. All right, so in summary, this table is looking a lot better. We have a site count of 92, and 81 of the 92, that's about 88% completion. We have 2 that are completed, but we don't have power yet. We have 5 over here that are in active civil build, and we have 4 that haven't started. One is the Rock Rapids IPTV, and the other 3 are just lease sites. The lease sites are going to go super fast. IPTV one is the one that we got to figure out how we're going to do that. All right, so this gives you more of a statewide perspective. So you see all the ones circled in red are the ones that haven't started. So that's IPTV, lease site, and lease site. Those are your 3 lease sites. Up here we have the additional 2 lease sites that we actually started working on. Here's an IPTV site that is done. We don't have power on it. And here's the other 2 sites that are done, but we don't have power on them. Here's the other IPTV site, which is active build. So overall, it's looking pretty darn good. We've had lots and lots of challenges. We were happy that winter was over, but then spring came and we have our good months and bad months. In June, we actually fell behind in June because we had about 3 weeks that just rained and rained and rained, and then it got windy. So that complicated things. All right, so a couple things. Summary, we've been just building with 5 active sites right now. 4 are gonna start in the near future. Again, we're at 88% completion. Microwave paths is what we're focusing on right now. So we have a lot of sites that are built, so we're focusing on connecting the sites with the microwave. So the rain has been sort of an issue for us, so we're dealing with that, so we're trying to catch up right now. The capital area site, which we had here in downtown Des Moines, the Lucas building, we completed the integration of that into the existing simulcast cell. That was a significant task, so we had to get a crane and remove the equipment that was there and replace it and do the integration. So all that stuff is completed, and so now the capital area site is now part of the Westcom cell, which is integrated into ISICS. That required a lot of coordination because it's an active system. So we had to coordinate with Westcom users, we had to coordinate with Post 16 and different entities as well, as Unity Point, for example. We got it done. We started the process of the integration for all the DPS dispatch locations, so we're in the process of doing that. And we're expecting to complete that by the end of July, meaning that all dispatch centers, right now only JFHQ has access to it, but we want to do the other ones. But in addition to that, those dispatch centers have to maintain the capability of having access to all of their conventional stuff. All the noisy VHF stuff that you guys use has to be integrated into this so that there could be a period of time where you can use both because there's going to be a transition period. So we're in the process of doing that. I have STs working this week in Storm Lake, and so we're kind of making the rounds, interconnecting all this stuff together. We also did a coverage demo. I had mentioned last time I wasn't able to be here, but I mentioned it in the call, so we did a coverage demo as well. That was interesting, and it gave a lot of insight to the folks that were able to participate in that. And then we have this issue with the 700 megahertz channel plan. So I'm going to explain that a little bit. But before I go into that, I want to do, actually I should have inverted this, but what I want to do was explain what this issue with the 700 megahertz is. So if we look at the state as it stands right now, and let's say we had, just for the sake of simplicity, we have 3 blocks of frequencies. If you have 3 blocks of frequencies and you still have to cover the entire state, the way you cover the state is that you reuse the frequencies in different places throughout the state. So I'm going to call it A, B, and C. So I start in the lower portion of the state here. This is, I call my block A. And then I'm just going to start filling up the state, right? So now I have block B. If you notice, block B and block A overlap with each other. But that's okay because they're different frequency blocks, right? Here's our block C. So block C and block B overlap with each other. And that's okay because, again, they're different frequency blocks. But if that's all I have is A, B, and C, now I got to get creative as I keep on reusing these frequencies. So if I want to continue, I choose to use frequency A to fill this gap because A, C, and B can overlap each other without any problems. You can see that in that map. So when I go further, I can't use B, so I choose to use C because there's significant separation between the 2 C circles that you see here. So C, A, and B can overlap without a problem, right? So you basically have to do that through the entire state. All right, so I go up, so I can use A here, I can use B here. So I'm going to use C here because I don't have a choice. But if you notice, A and B overlap and C overlap a little bit. We're within the state, we can manage that. So we can manage that with antenna designs, down tilts. We can use directional antennas, all that kind of stuff so that the circle gets distorted and it's not a perfect circle. But that way we avoid overlapping each other. Or we figure, well, you know, for that particular area, we can live with that. We can do that amongst ourselves. But if we have to deal with other states, we can't just say live with it, right? We have to coordinate with all the other states. So as I go further, A is fine, C is fine, but here we got B, and as you can see, B has a little bit of overlap down here too, just like this C had a little bit of overlap over here, right? So again, this is just A, B, and C, so I'm just showing 3 blocks of frequencies. We have 4 channels per site, 4 frequencies. We have actually 6 talkbacks, but we have 4 frequencies per site. And we have 90 sites. So we have to, this becomes a lot more granular and it becomes a lot more complicated. So what we found was that as we were deploying this and we're getting this stuff done, we already had a frequency plan that we were using. We found that at the southern edge of Iowa, some of the frequencies that we were using were also being used in Missouri. And the problem was that that wasn't communicated. Each state has what's called a regional planning committee, which deals with frequency coordination. So we didn't know that that Missouri was using these particular frequencies until we were starting to deploy this, and then there's was issues with interference. So we had to put a stop to it and figure out how do we resolve this, right? So engineering got to work and basically redid all these circles to come up with a plan that would work. But the problem is, what's complicated is, it's not just it has to work within your state, it has to work with all of the surrounding states because these frequencies repeat in all of the surrounding states. So if I come over here and I decide I'm gonna move B, this B, let's say if I make it a C in order to avoid problems down here, well now I have a problem over here. So now I gotta change this to maybe a B. Well, if I change that to a B, well, now it's going to interfere over here. So it's a whole domino effect that takes place, and it's very cumbersome and complicated. So we do the repacking of the frequencies. We use different antenna patterns in some of the edges of the state to try to minimize that as much as possible. So that takes time, and it takes time not only to plan it, which we did that and we submitted that, but it also takes time to get the concurrence from all the other states. So far, we got concurrence from 2 states. So what we've done is I've been hesitant to retune because we have to basically retune every single site that we've done. And I've been somewhat hesitant because it's time consuming and time is money, right? So I got to pay people to do all this stuff. And I'd like to do that only one more time, right? And so, but because we have relationships with the adjacent states, we have some smarts and some common knowledge between them. We know we have a better idea. So when the engineer developed the frequency plan, he took into account all the adjacent states. So Missouri looked at it and they were fine with it now that we've made the adjustment. Illinois looked at it, they were fine with it. So we're working with Minnesota and Nebraska and basically the surrounding states. Craig Allen, as a PM for the state, has been working with those guys. We've also had Chris Myers help us out with that. So it takes, it's not just a technical thing, right? But it's really collaborating with the adjacent states because we have to maintain good standing with each other because after all, we got to collaborate with our neighbors, right? So with that said, what I chose to do was I chose to take sort of a careful approach and start to retune sites, but not at the super fast, rapid pace. So that we're putting some smarts into some of the sites that we're retuning, but we can't just blanket the entire state and send the whole army out there with the risk of we're going to have to do this again, right? So with that said, this map, I'm not sure if you can see that on your screen, there's actually 2 colors here. There's like a light grayish blue, which is what I call the coverage with the original 700 megahertz plan. And then there is a green area over here. You can see it over here. It covers this area over here. That's the modified 700 megahertz plan. So what I've done is I've had our techs retune some of these sites. So all the stuff that shows here in green are the sites that we retune, and that's what the coverage footprint looks like right now for mobile. All the other stuff that's gray, that's what it was. So we've turned those off. They're not available because when you retune these, if we don't retune the other ones, right, then you start to have interference issues. So we're trying to be smart about this, and so we have a lot of sites that we've knocked off the air in order to maintain a stable area, which is the green area that we show here. So what we're hoping for is that we get concurrence from the adjacent states pretty soon so that then we can, you know, punch the accelerator and just go full blast and finish the rest of them. Does that make sense?
So, Melvin, this is Chris quickly. Just for clarification, with the gray shaded areas of the map, that's where we would be if we hadn't had to modify the channel plan. But because we've had to modify it, we're delayed slightly with the deployment. And the light, or the darker green is where we're at now. But eventually, that whole state's going to be shaded green, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Correct. So what's dark green right now is if you go out with the mobile, you'll be able to have access to the system in those green areas.
That's wide area,
White area.
all green.
I think there's some pockets that are site trunking, but there's a huge portion of this is white area. I have a radio when I come in and I start picking up. Once I get in, I don't know, probably I can't remember, but there's a good portion of the state. I'd say about it's not completely green because I'm further south on 80, but I start getting maybe about half an hour before I go into Iowa City with a portable radio in my vehicle. And then I can go all the way out to the west side of the state, maintain communications.
And I'm assuming these maps also include the other specifications in the contract, such as delivered audio quality, reliability, things
Correct.
like that. Yes.
Correct. That's the only way we build them. All right. Okay, so we did this coverage testing demo, so I want to explain that a little bit, again, to help visualize what it is. So the coverage testing actually involves just two pieces of equipment, a laptop computer and a radio, mobile radio. So what we do is we connect the PC or the laptop computer into the radio, so we have direct access, what we call the data link. So we're basically pulling raw data out of the radio, and we bypass a lot of the controls of the radio itself. So we run a special software on this PC that samples data from this radio. So we have this radio, we have a mag mount antenna, which is mounted on the rooftop of the vehicle. And then we also have a GPS receiver, which is also mounted to the rooftop of the vehicle, and that connects to the laptop. So the laptop knows where we are, and because it's connected to this radio, it knows what it's supposed to be looking for. So it pulls all the data directly out of the radio. So I think that was on the 15, June 15, I think is when it was. So there was a shortage of vans in Des Moines. I was trying to get a people van, so the best compromise was to get one of these big, huge SUVs so we can do it in style, I guess. So on this SUV, it's hard to see here, but there's a radio here in the back. So here's a little bit more of a close-up. So we have a radio on a board, right, and it has cables that plug into power, and then we have the antenna that goes to the rooftop. I think I have a little bit more of a close-up here. So the radio just plugs in, and the radio is basically a receiver that we're sampling data based on the computer connection to that radio. So when we do coverage testing, we will have, I think it's up to 12 radios that will be the golden radios. They will be tuned and they will be set up like this on boards so that whenever we do this coverage testing, whatever vehicle we use, we can just move it from vehicle to vehicle. We don't want to take any chances with anybody else's radios. These have to be radios that are already pre-qualified and set up to do this. So on the inside, here's your computer. This computer is attached to that mobile. So what we did was we set up a big screen so that everybody inside could see what we were doing. So here's a better view. So we had, these seats will pop open so people can sit in the back. So here's our computer, which all we did was we duplicated the screen so we could see it a lot better, easier. So here's a little bit of better view with the doors closed so we can avoid the glare. But on this computer, here's where you see the map. And as we're driving, in this case, I had the lead engineer was sitting here, and I was the driver of the day, and he was just telling me where to go. And I think a couple of months ago, I showed sort of some animations to show how this works. Where basically, he sees all the roads, and he's just telling me, just keep on going this way, and over there, turn right. And I just blindly follow what he tells me. And when we enter these test tiles, the computer itself makes some little chirps and noises so you kind of get an idea what the status is, and it starts taking samples, and then it completes. It changes the tile color, and we know that we've done with that tile. We just move on to the next one. Here's the sophisticated equipment we use to hold it all together. But this is kind of how we did it. We had four people in the back plus the lead engineer. A little bit of better view. So we can all see what was happening on the screen as we're driving around. Here's Greg Van Hefty, he's the lead engineer. He's pointing out to all the different things that were taking place on that screen. Overall, I think it was good for folks to see that and understand. Maybe sometime in the future we can do this again as we're approaching the coverage testing, but hopefully we can get some more people who are willing to see this and witness this so they can become familiar with the process. That's all I had.
When do you estimate that taking place, Melvin?
Coverage testing? So we want to do that, and we can do it all the way up to the beginning of October. And what we're doing right now, if you notice that coverage map, let me see if I can bring it up. So if you notice the coverage map, we have all these squares are the counties, right? So by identifying the counties that are already covered in green, for example, because some of these counties, what we know is what are the sites that contribute coverage to that county. So what I'm having the engineer do is creating a list on a county by county basis, identifying those sites so that then we can link that up so that, for example, here, I don't know off the top of my head, but this county, for example, is completely covered. That would be a target that we can start on that particular county without regards to the rest of the state finishing, right? The trick is we don't want to do this until we have concurrence from all the states. Because the purpose of coverage testing is to test the RF link from the fixed side of the network to the vehicle. So we want to tune that regardless if it's connected to the core or not, regardless if we have the overall system, it doesn't really matter. But we need to tune it to the specific frequencies, and it never gets touched again, right? So if we spend the resources doing the coverage testing, and we don't have concurrence, there's a risk that we have to test those counties again. So we have that list ready, and I'm estimating right now that will probably start at the beginning of September. But it all hinges on getting that concurrence from the surrounding states.
Thanks.
Like right now, if they told us you're good, we can start identifying, there's a couple of counties in here that are completely covered. We can start that immediately. But coverage testing is expensive, not only for me, but whoever's gonna help us out, right? Because they gotta have a representative, either local or state or whomever it is, right? And that person has to be basically driving all day around, right? And I'm pretty sure they're not gonna wanna do it again after doing it once.
You've got to give us some lead time on that, because
Yes.
it's hard to get what equates to a small army of public safety with, you said you wanted marked units?
Yes,
That's not easy to do, so the more lead time, DPS certainly can't do all, and we couldn't, there's no way, we have enough people.
okay.
But I think we have some partners that would help us in the region, but we have to give them lead time. We can't just say, hey, next Monday, we're gonna be traveling
Sure,
for
sure.
14 days straight, or whatever.
No, that's for sure. One of the things that we thought about that might be a workable solution also is if marked vehicles is a problem, that we could have these mag mount type things created that we don't have to use a law enforcement vehicle or marked vehicle. We just need to mark it with something that's official. It could be, we can make a big sticker that's a mag mount sticker that says ISICS coverage testing team or something to that extent, so that at least there's some semblance of, there's an official group of people that are doing this, right? And that might give some more flexibility in this process too, so. All right, no questions? All right, thank you.
But